Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park. And today we're bringing you our second read of Rich AF by Vivian Tu. But before we do that, this section is going to be based around the topic of budgeting. But we tend to budget for reasons, whether it's to budget for a future, to budget for something that you want. So, along those lines, is there anything that you're currently budgeting for or something that you're putting your money to the side so that you can get something in the future?
So, yes, I'm currently budgeting for an emergency fund, and like any extra money that I have, I squirrel away in my high yield savings account, which we learned from Berna Anat. And another thing that I'm hoping to budget more for is fun money. I kind of haven't been making enough to have fun money, but I think if I budgeted instead of just willy nilly bought things as they came up, I think I would have a better time at having fun money set aside.
Yeah, and I'm still working on budgeting tactics. I think currently, same. We are both in the same boat of trying to budget for emergency funds. Like something that recently came up was we had a sensor stolen from our car, and it's nothing that we can control against, but without insurance, that sensor would have cost $3,500.
Mhm.
Luckily, we've been saving for a long enough where we could take that hit. It would mean a lot to us and it wouldn't feel comfortable. But we have enough where that kind of a hit won't put us into loans or it won't put us into debt or anything like that.
Mhm.
I do try to put some things into an account that also includes fun money. But I guess more of interest is what is fun money to you? Like, where would that fun money go?
For me, fun money would go to a lot of prints and stickers because I love prints and stickers. I love putting them up and having them be my inspiration for the month. But currently, one of our cats took down the grid, so we need to put it back up in order for me to actually utilize the stickers and prints.
Mhm. So I think our fun money would probably go to different places then, because you're thinking more stickers and postcards and things like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking more for our fun money to go to places like travel.
Mm.
So we haven't been able to travel for a while, which Korea's high on the bucket list, just so I can get back to family. We also want to go to your family in Guam and
Sure.
be able to see them. So that's more of where my fun money is going to. There's a slight price difference between what our fun monies would draw,
Yes.
but no, that's what I was more thinking about with my fun money. And so, budgeting, yes, our first priority is going to be to have an emergency fund.
Mm-hmm.
Our second part of that is with the thought of possibly moving, having money in a ready to move fund.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, when there's enough, having some money so that we can start to prioritize traveling and seeing family again. So
Absolutely.
those are the things that I'm budgeting for, that we're budgeting for,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll tell you more about what Vivian too thinks about budgeting. But before we do that, let's go into our recommendation for the week.
Our recommendation for the week is Jax Ko. Jax Ko is an illustrator, muralist, and maximalist currently based in Portland, Oregon. The persisting theme of their work is focused on redefining the narrative of AAPI folks by celebrating nuanced representation often overshadowed by reductive and offensive stereotypes. Some of Jax Ko's murals are around Portland with the pastel neons, bold colors and textures, gender fluidity, and vintage stylings. Recently, Jaxco also received an Asian American Changemaker Award under the activist category. You can learn more about Jaxco through their website at jaxco.com. That's JAXKO.com, and find them on Instagram at YoJaxco.
Yep, and that's going to be our recommendation for the week. All right, so second read of Rich AF by Vivian Tu. In this read, we read pages 83 through 162, which were chapters 3, I am in charge of my money, through chapter 4, I take care of future me.
Mm-hmm.
We previously learned a little bit about how rich people act and how they handle their money, We talked about how there are disparities in how much money you have just from maybe the history of who you are and where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
We've discussed a little bit about where our money might come from and kind of broached on the topics of how we can maybe get more money.
Mm-hmm.
But in this read, it's almost purely about budgeting.
Yes, we see that budgeting comes into play, like we mentioned earlier, in order for us to live life and get to the things that we want to purchase, whether they're big purchases like traveling or smaller purchases like postcards and stickers.
Yep. And a little bit of that also goes into one thing she talks about, which is value based spending.
Mm-hmm. With value based spending, essentially you're taking the price of the thing you want to buy, like a bag, divided by the amount of money it takes for you to pay for it hourly. So, for example, with the bag, it's $100, and let's say you make $20 an hour. So 100 divided by 20 would equal to 5 hours of working for that bag. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So essentially, what you're trying to say with value based spending is that you're putting the number of hours you're working or time that you're working into what the item is that you want to buy.
Definitely. And with value based spending, it's also dependent on the person. For one person, maybe the bag is worth it, but for another, it might not be worth it to use 5 hours of wages for that particular bag. For another example, Vivian too talks about investing in eyelashes every month. Even though to us it might be frivolous to invest $150 per month on fake hair, for her, it makes her feel confident and makes her feel put together. So for her, that's worth it. For me, I wouldn't feel like eyelashes would be the thing that is my value. For me, I value, like I said, stickers and postcards, but also art in general. So art in the form of tattoos, art in the form of paintings and the such.
Yeah. And I think with this, we also have to realize that values change over time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it very much used to go into shoes, and I still love my shoes. It's definitely not like I've lost interest in it. But now that I have a certain amount and I have the colors and things that I want, for me to put value into new shoes, even though it might be the same cost, it is no longer the same value to me. So now I am no longer willing to work X amount of hours for new shoes, whereas before I was much more willing to because the value of those shoes were higher.
For sure.
So this was a very good topic that she broached on because it then led into the big one, which was budgeting.
Right.
So, how do you keep the amount of money that you have from work so that you can utilize it on things that you might value?
Exactly.
And for me, one of the big things that she did mention was that it's not a bad thing to budget. It's not this scary topic of feeling like you're going to lose money, but it's much more an idea of trying to understand where you are with your finances.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving yourself an understanding of where your money is going and how you can utilize that money to go to the right places so that it doesn't get lost in the fray of the month to month expenses.
Absolutely. And what she mentions in the book is that it doesn't matter how much or how little you make, anyone and everyone can budget. And she says this quote on page 114, you can afford anything, you just can't afford everything.
Right.
And that's true of anyone with any budget.
Right. And she also does mention, though, that not everyone is going to have the full capability to budget.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that have to live month to month,
Right.
and for them, the ability to budget may not be realistic, and their money has to go to the priorities and expenses of living expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
But for those that can budget, she also listed out a couple of different strategies that you could use. For me, the ones that really stuck out were ones that I was using without realizing that I was using these strategies.
Mm. And what are those strategies?
So, reverse budgeting. And reverse budgeting is putting your money into savings without even looking at it.
Mm.
The way that I tend to do that is with the salary that I get, I have the ability to parse my money into different accounts. And this is something that Vivian mentions within the book, but I will automatically send parts of my money to a completely different account knowing that that's more of my emergency fund savings kind of money, and the rest of my money for like payments I need to make within the month. I also then carry out half payment budgeting, which is spending half of your money on the expenses that you need. So I get paid bi-weekly, which means certain amount of money goes to this cost bi-weekly, and then certain amount of money goes to this cost towards the end of the month. So I'm able to separate my money and have much more of a grasp of what to expect rather than being shocked and surprised by this new spending. And like rents go up all the time, and we are
Mhm.
currently renters. So things like that are going to be much more manageable because I know how much I'm going to make by the end of that period where I need to pay for that month. And so I can try to figure out, am I going to be able to make this much? There are those real questions of, if I can't make that much money, maybe we need to move. Maybe we can't afford this place. Like this lifestyle may not be sustainable for us, which I can know a lot better by budgeting and knowing where my money is.
For sure. Similarly, I have been doing reverse budgeting without knowing it, but also maybe because of suggestions from Berna and Not when we read Money Out Loud. I have a system set in place where my money automatically gets taken out and gets put into an emergency fund so that I will never know when that happens. I just know that when I open the account, I'm like, whoa, look at that. It looks like money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think speaking of Berna, that's one of the things that she made more fun than I think this current book.
Mm.
I think Vivian gives a lot of very strong, smart strategies on how to save money.
Mm-hmm.
Berna kind of made it a little bit more fun.
Mm.
So, one of the things that I'm talking about is Vivian talking about opening up different accounts
Yeah.
and making sure you know how to control your account, knowing how to make the best out of opening up a new account and what that would mean for the bank that you're opening it for. So, you're trying to gain that advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Berna, the way that she explained opening up new accounts was a little bit more fun. She would talk about renaming the account into something that's a little bit more playful and something that you can look forward to
Yes.
putting that money into.
Totally.
So I like the difference in what they're saying, but overall, the scheme and the thought process of how to budget and how to use that money is still in that same framework of making sure you know where your money's going and how to place that money so that you can utilize it.
Definitely. And the whole point of budgeting is to keep the money that you earn. And one of the ways you may need to do so is by having the hard conversations with your family and friends.
Yeah, and this seemed like such a good topic for Vivian to put in. It's something that I think affects the AAPI community, the BIPOC community,
Mm.
more so at large.
Mm.
Like friends that I know that have moved here from Mexico so that they can support their family back home, and they are not living in fancy apartments or anything. They are living enough so that they can make money to send back. And it also affects other people that I know who grew up here. They grew up with a middle income kind of lifestyle, and they were able to make enough that they're finally supporting the members of the family, like their parents or grandparents or whoever it may be. But doing so may not always be beneficial if you're draining yourself and not properly apportioning that money so that you can also have a lifestyle that would support you.
Exactly. And it gets harder to have these conversations when you're seen as the rich person or the rich one.
Right.
For example, with my family and my experience as a Filipinx Filipino person, because we live in the United States or on Guam, which is a territory of the United States, we're seen as the rich ones because we were able to move out of poverty. We were able to live a life with middle class income. And so by being the rich aunt or being the rich family, we were seen as being able to loan money. And Vivian mentions one of the ways that we can stop those conversations. For example, like saying, I don't loan money or I no longer have enough money to give.
Yeah, it's being very straightforward. It's being blunt to the point that it no longer leaves room for questions or that repetitive questioning every time there's a family event of, oh, do you have money now? Or is it possible for you to give me some change or something like that?
Right.
I think the one that she pinpoints the most is the I don't loan money.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a good thing to start saying. It's one of the hardest things to say to family. But once you say, I don't loan money, it's not saying that you don't give money to people, but it's also recognizing that if you're going to give that money, it's to the understanding that you're probably not going to get that money back,
Right.
which for a lot of people that kind of grow up in very similar shoes, we sometimes have aunties or uncles that get themselves into some kind of monetary trouble or issues, and finance may not be their game, and they will try to get money.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to support them and you have the finances for it because you've been budgeting,
Mm-hmm.
then you can then give them money and support them. But if you're not going into it with the thought that you're going to get that money back, it's a whole different perspective because now they may not ask you for money again because you just said, I don't loan money. I
Mm-hmm.
can give you a certain amount because this is the amount that my budget goes to, but I won't keep giving you loan money so you can go into more ventures.
Right, exactly.
This does become an issue when you have a nanai like yours, though,
Hmm.
who's very friendly,
Oh,
who
yes.
loves her family a lot and loves her family in the Philippines. And so whatever money she gets, it will usually find its way to support the island of the Philippines.
Right. So it would be nice to share these lessons that we've learned to other people, to your friends and family who might be asking for money, but letting them know, hey, there's a way to make sure that you protect your money.
And for your nanai, it's not a bad thing.
Right.
Like she loves giving that money and it brings her joy to be able to support the people that she loves.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows where it's going. She knows that she's not going to get this back. It's money that is, in a sense, it's kind of like pasalubong.
Yeah, it's gift giving.
Yeah, so it's her way of reaching back and giving to people that probably have supported her in the past or that she has found a fondness for.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing it probably with the understanding that it's not loan money,
Right.
which isn't a bad thing.
Right.
So, one of the other points that we wanted to mention within this read kind of goes with the thought process of knowing where your money goes, how to control your money a little bit more. And it deals with getting down to the core of why you're doing that,
Mm-hmm.
which is knowing your own worth.
Yes. And knowing your worth in a way that shows other people that you're not to be messed with.
Yeah, it's you being, and I've never seen this movie actually. Have you ever watched Pretty Woman?
Yes.
Okay. I only know the scene that Vivian also mentions in the book,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the one where Julia Stiles is going back. Nope.
No, not Julia Stiles.
It's the one where Julia Roberts is going back to the store and she now has the money to be able to buy all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so she buys all this stuff and then she goes, big mistake. I forget what else she says, but it's pretty much her showing that she knows her worth. She is of value
Mm-hmm.
and she treats the staff appropriately.
Yes.
There seemingly is going to be a fine line between being not overconfident, but kind of even above that, like being
Cocky?
cocky, being like brash, being
Mm,
rude.
right.
But you don't have to enter that territory when you know your own worth. You can still know how much value you have to places without being that cocky kind of mentality.
Right. Know that you are a client. You are a client to the stores that you enter. You're a client to the financial institutions that you essentially make business with.
Yeah. Know that the tote bag that the bank gives you is for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
In this portion, one thing that Vivian also mentions is the cost to acquire new clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of money for them to lose you as a client
Right.
and try to get someone to fill your place. So if you are looking for a new phone bill, if you're looking for a new bank, if you have something that is of a subscription that you like, but you would like a little bit more value from, truly look at it from the standpoint as you are giving that company or that group of people or whatever it is, you're giving them your money.
Yes.
So you are the one that is empowered to do so. And there are other places that will take your money probably for that same service or good.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There's so much in here that's such great, valuable information. A lot of it, once again, is about budgeting, but also figuring out what that money means to you, how to use that money in the right places. And yeah, she talks about familial relationships. She talks about individual relationship with money just so you know who you are with that cash or that imaginary cash per se.
Hmm.
But how did you feel about this read?
I felt like it was very empowering. Although we had other budgeting tips from Berna and Nat's Money Out Loud, this one with Vivian too specifically made me feel confident in a way that's not overconfident.
Yeah. Are there certain changes you're looking to make based off of this current read?
I'm hoping to try zero based budgeting since going through this section. I feel like it's where my current situation needs to go so that I'm only spending the money that I have, and all the money that I'm spending or all the money that I'm earning gets its own job.
Yeah. I am going to put a little bit more thought and effort into where my budgeting is. I think with the money that I'm putting aside, as much as it is aside, I am going to try to figure out what to do with it. And for me, budgeting doesn't always mean just putting money aside. I
Mhm.
might try to put it into a CD or something where it can then earn me a little bit more. The world is a very interesting place right now in terms of finance and what we're
Yes.
expecting with the new president and stuff. So I don't really know exactly what I want to do with it yet,
Mhm.
which feels safe, but that's all stuff I can do with budgeting and figuring that out.
Absolutely.
We do have two more reads for us to learn a little bit more about what to do with our money,
Hmm.
and we'll learn a little bit more through our next read, which is our third read.
And that'll be pages 163 through 232, which is chapters 5, I wasn't born rich, but my kids will be, through half of chapter 6, I am ready for financial domination.
Yep. And if you found any of these tips useful or helpful, I'd love to know which ones you kind of clicked in with. But for anyone that wants to get in contact with us, how can they do so?
You can email us through asianbookclubpod@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
We also have our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com, which have books that we've read in the past, books that we recommend, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us is to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast.
Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat! Bye!